So I'm sure many of you would have seen last week, World Rugby has announced law changes to the game coming into effect from the 1st of July, and there is some interesting stuff in there, in particular for the scrum. That has got the most headlines and I think will get the most talking points. Some interesting bits in there as well, so I thought I'd speak about it in this video. Do drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on it, in particular the fact that you can no longer take a scrum from a free kick. I think that is the most controversial part of this, and I will run through the couple of other changes as well. One of which I think is obvious and there won't be any complaints about. The other one makes sense. I just wonder what the unintended consequences will be, but I'll get into all of that. And also, whilst you're here, if you can like the video, that just gives it a boost and spreads it to as many people as possible. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you do not miss a thing. But as I say, welcome back. So this was announced in the week from World Rugby. Essentially, there's 3 law changes coming into effect. They have closed the Dupont loophole, as it is called, in terms of how players are onside or offside during a kicking phase of play. They are trying to prevent crocodile rolls. That's been the case for a while, but they've taken that a step further in terms of how players are clearing out at the ruck, and teams will no longer be able to take a scrum from a free kick. I'll come to the scrum last. I want to get through the first 2. So offside in front of the kicker, this is the one that I think it makes a lot of sense. We understand that Antoine Dupont, as it has been called, the Dupont law or Dupont loophole, found that loophole, loads of teams exploited it. It can lead to pretty stagnant, rubbish phases of play where 2 teams are kicking and everyone has just stood in the middle of the pitch because they don't need to make any effort to retreat. They've essentially closed that. In terms of the wording of what it's actually going to look like and the rationale, they said teams and players have recognised that in a kick battle with opponents, the kicking team, providing they're more than 10 metres away from the ball, can be put onside by the actions of the catcher when the person who's catching it basically runs 5 metres, passes or kicks. Blah, blah, blah. The new wording makes clear that any player who is offside in open play needs to take action. So I think essentially players are going to have to retreat themselves and not just remain stationary or have one of their players who was either the kicker or behind the kicker get in front of them. So they're not just going to be able to stand there in the middle of the pitch and then try and pressurise or charge down the catcher. So that all makes sense. As I say, I can't imagine there's going to be too many people that have a particular problem with them making an adjustment there. As for the crocodile roll, as I say, they've already outlawed the crocodile roll. They're basically trying to take it a step further. And this is the one that I understand what they're trying to do. I just wonder what the unintended consequences of it are going to be. So they said the rationale is player safety. Obviously, there's not too many of these actions, but they can cause long-term injury. So what they're trying to do is basically have the players clearing out at a ruck to, I think the key part of this really is where they say a player may remove the jackler from the tackle area by pushing or driving them backwards, including by grabbing the knee or leg, but must not roll, pull, or twist an opponent. On the surface, makes complete sense to me. But even watching games this weekend, watching replays of yesterday's matches today, there are so many occasions where to get the jackler out of the ruck, they don't purely get driven backwards. I think players are flying in all the time and hitting them at the side and pushing them to the side. Is that going to get penalised? Because that's where I think we could see a lot more penalties against the attacking team if that is how that is going to be officiated. I suppose that's what I'm saying here. I understand what they're trying to do. Player safety, understandably, particularly in this sort of area, needs to be a focus. But how you do it is key. If you are really hot on the fact you can only drive people or push them backwards and you prevent the players that come in at slight angles to try and get leverage, I'll be interested. I would imagine it will be quite straightforward. I don't think they will be as strict as maybe I'm envisaging in my mind, but it was just something that when I read that law and I read the way in which it is worded, in particular saying pushing them backwards rather than pulling them to the side or pushing them to the side, what does that look like and what exactly does that mean? So that's just what I thought there. It is so often the case with law changes. Something will happen which we don't necessarily think of at the time. That's what came to mind for me. But let's get on to the scrum. Lack of scrums, the depowering of the game, as it has been mentioned. So you can no longer, or from the 1st of July, will no longer be able to take a free kick, or take a scrum, sorry, when you get a free kick, which is going to feel like a law in particular against the Springboks, particularly after what we saw in the World Cup, where they were calling marks in their own 22 and calling scrums because of the strength of their set piece. World Rugby's reasoning for this is to speed up the game, have the ball moving more, not getting bogged down in scrums and resets and that taking time away. I think there's a few different things to say here. First of all, I think there is a danger that we don't appreciate, or the lawmakers don't appreciate, the importance of a scrum. And if we're depowering the game, we're taking away something that is so fundamental to the game. Yes, we all love running rugby. We all love to see amazing tries scored. But one of the great things about the sport, I think, is the different ways in which you're able to get an upper hand. And the physical side of that is absolutely crucial, of which the scrum can be a vital component. Look at the World Cup. Look at what South Africa did to England in the final 20 minutes of that game, when they just got complete and utter dominance in the scrum in the latter stages. It swung the game in their favour, and that sort of element is absolutely crucial. The other concern here is whether a team that's a weaker scrummaging team, if they could be clever to try and give away a free kick and then the opposition aren't able to call another scrum from that free kick, whether it is a situation that has the potential to be manipulated if a team isn't as strong in the set piece. But I think the wider issue here for me is this obsession with ball in play time, with running rugby, with the ball moving. I get it, we want to see those elements. I think we often still do see those elements, but we don't want to lose also something that's crucial to the game, because the scrum is an area which separates rugby from so many other sports. It hugely separates it from rugby league, for example, where the scrums in rugby league is basically just a reason to get half the players into one area and then you ship the ball out wide. It's not actually a contest. That competition at the scrum is vital to the game, and I'm not entirely sure that I think this law change would be a good one. The other thing as well, I would say, I suppose we do see teams go for the scrum option at the free kick, but I wouldn't say it's all of the time. First of all, I don't think we see loads of free kicks in a game anyway. And secondly, I'll be interested to know what the stats are for what is the percentage of times, how often when teams actually get a free kick do they opt to take a scrum. I've never felt, watching the game and covering the game, that it is a major issue. But you guys can let me know what you think. Do you think this is wrong? Do you think it's a good thing? Or actually maybe we're missing the point here. Rather than preventing scrums happening, do we just need to be more focusing on stopping scrums going down, being reset, losing time in that regard? Is there something else they could focus on here which keeps the scrum and keeps the scrum as an option from a free kick, but also maybe stops us losing 3-4 minutes at a time from that one area of the game when players are going down, when we're having to reset, when it's taking a lot of time out of the clock? Don't know what all the answers are, but that's my general feel. So in terms of the offside, in front of the kicker, all that sort of thing, no problem with what they're doing at all. The crocodile roll, no problem with it. I just wonder whether there could be some unintended consequences there, probably depending on how they ultimately officiate it. And then removing the scrum as an option when you get a free kick. The most controversial part of this, I think, the thing that will get most of you talking. So, what do you make of it? Comment down below, let me know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. I'll see you in the next one.